Thank you everyone for joining us today from the Cancer Fund and the Lowdown on Cancer. And, you know, I am incredibly excited to be able to share this with you. I'm hoping that you will see what I saw when I was first introduced to the Cancer Fund in 2019. It's a totally new and different and unique way, and I thought it was brilliant. It's a different way to have the checks that I was writing have a way bigger impact on cancer. See, even before my diagnosis, I had best friends with cancer, and I walked the walks, and I ran the rans, and I wore the pink tutu, and I dyed my hair pink, and I wrote lots of checks. And shortly after that, I was asked to be the executive director of a nonprofit organization. And interestingly enough, in doing my background in checking about that, I was horrified and mortified to find out that $1, usually, if of $3, $2 of those dollars are used to keep the organization alive and to keep it running. So if $3, only $1 was going to the cause. So we actually structured our charity much differently. But that was when I got the first knowledge, and it really began to frustrate me. And I stopped writing checks because I could never find out where the money was going. You know, then in May of 2019, maybe like some of you guys, and how you found us would be interesting to find out. So if you would put in the chat how you ended up on this webinar, I'd really appreciate that, because that would be great for us to reference afterwards. But in 2019, like many of you, I saw an ad on Facebook. I wasn't sure what it was, but when I saw, I'm good about bribes. I don't think they're bribes if they work. My bribe was mimosas. So hell, I was in, you know, sounded good to me. And I got information that I had never seen before. Why? Because it doesn't exist. I got it immediately. The Cancer Fund was sharing with us a new idea, redirecting the checks I was writing to financially supporting cancer innovations. Now, to me, it only made sense. I had been the executive director of the charity for nearly 10 years, and I knew firsthand the incongruency, words are hard sometimes, incongruency of what the average charity was donating. And so I fully understood what this was like. And that's what I'm hoping that you're gonna see. But then life kind of got in the way, and I did not, because I was all in with the Cancer Fund. Life kind of got in the way, and it wasn't until this past March, Anthony reached out to me again, asked if I wanted to host an event like this, but again, we were gonna have the mimosa bribes, and that we were gonna do it in public. And that was the week that all the restaurants closed, and we got to go from being an in-person type of meeting in 4 very chaotic days to a meeting like this. And it's worked out very well. So now you fast forward, and behind the scenes, there's been some laborious tasks going on to make sure that the Cancer Fund is structured properly so that everything is on the up and up. They have to answer to the SEC, so everything is transparent. And transparency to me is important, because I knew that every time that I called any of those organizations that I'd written a check to, they could not tell me where that money goes. They couldn't tell me where they'd spend it, and they couldn't tell me what research had been moved forward because of my donation. And that's really what today's about. That's why we're here. We're here for the Cancer Fund to share a completely new and unique and really different way to write the check to have maybe even a greater impact on cancer. So I'm very excited to have you here, and thank you very much. Today, we're also going to be joined by James Bates from AdvaNow to share his important innovation that might benefit our community and anyone at risk developing cancer. And we have Anthony Bajoris from the Cancer Fund to answer questions about how we can support important cancer innovations like AdvaNow. So just a little housekeeping. Please remember to make sure that you're muted, and anything you can hear in the background, so can we. So just always make sure that you're muted. If you need the restroom for any reason, it's the second door on the left. The door closes a little hard, but don't worry. But do remember that, especially if you've got your camera on, we can see everything, so make sure you have your camera off. And more importantly, any questions, please put them in the chat bar. We're going to be monitoring them through this whole webinar, and we want to answer them. We either want to answer them when we can. They may get answered as you tag along, or we'll try and address them at the end. So, Anthony, before I turn it over to James, can you tell us a little bit about you and the Cancer Fund, a little about the Cancer Fund, and what the Cancer Fund sees in AdvaNow?
Yeah, sure. So first, I'm the founder and managing director of the Cancer Fund. And the Cancer Fund is a mission-based, community-driven venture capital firm and fund.
You know that.
So that makes sense to everyone, right?
Well, it actually lands as kind of an oxymoron given my background. What's your mission?
So our mission is, like many charities, is cancer charities, is to eliminate cancer. I would say we know that that's a kind of a big, hairy, audacious mission, right? So the more near term and more immediate goal is to really reduce the negative impact of cancer. And you're probably right. That probably is an oxymoron, because those are generally two very different things. And I'm not aware of many or any other examples of mission-driven venture funds.
So how is the Cancer Fund different from just regular cancer charities?
Yeah, I mean, our approach is different. Aside from the fact that we're not a charity, we invest in companies developing cancer innovations, right? So we're an investment fund. So from that perspective, I would say why we do things is probably similar to a lot of those charities, but how we do it, what we do, is very different.
Well, I know that in May of 2019, when I first heard about it, I was a little confused, and so I wanted to dive in deeper after we talk to James. But I have a few more questions. What does community-driven mean to you?
Yeah. Usually decisions in venture funds are made by a few individuals. And what we've done with the Cancer Fund is really structure this in a way that the community is involved, right? They're very involved in some cases, identifying and introducing us to some of the innovations, because there are a lot. But also in helping us choose which innovations we should take a closer look at and considering investing in.
Cancer Fund seems to impact us all. How have you been impacted by cancer?
Well, probably like most of the people on the call, I've lost friends and family to cancer, including my father, who died from colon cancer at 61.
Wow. Is that why you started the Cancer Fund?
It's certainly related to it. I mean, I started the Cancer Fund because I wanted more than hope. I wanted to see results. And like you, I wanted to see how the money was being spent. I mean, I had similar experiences. I can't say that I walked the walk or ran the rans, but I checked the checks. I don't know. I wrote the checks. Is that a thing? So, I certainly did that kind of thing until a point where I realized, we really started, particularly after I went through that experience with my father, where I saw, well, does this really make a difference? And the conclusion that I came to is, certainly there are cancer charities that do a lot of good. There are a lot of great programs, but I think the idea that we are supporting cancer research and that is the only thing that we can do, need to do, or should do to really make a difference was like, I knew that was incomplete. And so I wanted more immediate results. I wanted greater transparency. And I wanted to see change.
Awesome. Back to what Cancer Fund sees in AdvaNow, how can it benefit cancer patients, survivors, or anyone who might be at risk of developing cancer? Help me understand that.
Yeah, so we believe that, we look at literally hundreds and hundreds of innovations and hundreds of investment opportunities. And we think that AdvaNow can have a potential impact on all of those groups, cancer patients, survivors. But what we believe is that this can have potentially the greatest impact on that last group, which is those at risk of developing cancer, particularly those at risk of higher risk of developing cancer.
And how would AdvaNow do that?
Well, there's been a fair amount of study about sort of the root causes affecting patient outcomes for a lot of diseases, including cancer. So that's fairly well studied. As we all know and have seen from all of the campaigns, and if you watch football, right, or any sports in October, you'll know you're very aware of cancer awareness, right, and the need for early diagnosis, and how that relates to outcomes for patients. And so, that's an area that we looked at, that we've been looking at pretty closely at the Cancer Fund is what we might be able to do to bring diagnosis even earlier into the disease for those patients.
So you've delved into this quite a bit. What did you find?
Yeah, so we found that access to care is a critical factor. Simply if you're not going to the doctor, you're not getting diagnosed, and if you're not diagnosed, then your cancer is progressing undetected. And granted, different cancers move at different rates, but some of them can progress very quickly, and hence the difference that a few months, a few weeks, or even a few days can actually make in the outcome for a patient.
I earlier in the month was fortunate to get to interview Dr. Margaret Kierkegaard. And, she shared, which I thought was very interesting, that sometimes access to care isn't always about access to health insurance. It's often having the right care in the right time at the right place. So how does AdvaNow address that?
Yeah, certainly it's, and I think that's probably the common perception about access to care is, well, if you have health insurance, then you have access to care, right? And all the discussion around the Affordable Care Act and that, and certainly affordability of healthcare and health insurance is a factor, but it's not just about whether or not you have health insurance. It's also about more than just seeing a doctor. So to us at the Cancer Fund, what access to care means to us, I would say is very similar to what Dr. Kierkegaard said, which is we look at it as three things: having access to the right doctor, getting to see them quickly, and then the final factor is actually what happens during that visit. These are the three areas that we think AdvaNow can have an impact on all three of those. And so James can probably give you a better, more detailed explanation of some of that. So I'll turn it over to him.
Well, yeah. Well, so I'm honored to introduce James Bates, who is the CEO of an artificial intelligence health company. And James, same question to you. How is AdvaNow addressing access to the right care at the right place and the right time? And How will that impact cancer?
Yeah, thanks, Anne and Anthony, for having me being part of the program. You know, why don't we start with just a simple graph that shows how cancer survival is directly dependent on how early it's diagnosed. So I'll go ahead and share my screen there. And what you're looking at, hopefully that's doing well there for you. Oops. What you're looking at is actually the deaths that can be avoided by early cancer diagnosis. And when you look at it, there's a total of 11.4 million deaths estimated in 2025 from cancer. And if you think about when we diagnose those patients, the earlier we diagnose them, if we could find the cancer in stage 1 or pre-stage 1 or in stage 2 and stage 3 or even through stage 4, we can save 5 million lives. So what is the best cancer diagnosis? Just having access to your doctor. And it's just amazing when you think about the impacts that people have and the different level of access that people have to healthcare. Not only as Anthony mentioned, is it about health insurance, but it's about actually seeing the doctor and how painful it is to schedule it. And when you start looking at how long it takes to actually see a primary care doctor, you're looking at the average of 24 days. So if you think about a healthy person, and a lot of people that have cancer start out as very healthy. Maybe you're feeling a little bit tired, or maybe you have a lump that's kind of weird, but you think it'll go away. Or you have a kind of a skin, sore that's not quite getting better. You're just waiting. Why? Because if you want to see your doctor, you're waiting 24 days in major metropolitan areas. In mid-sized metropolitan areas, you're waiting 32 days. Now, if you live in Boston, you're waiting 52 days. The patients are bearing the burden. And the pain of dealing with this causes people to delay that access. So anything that we can do to give people near immediate access when they have a concern and reduce the cost such that it's available to everyone will ultimately help us save lives. And, just getting them in stage 1, 5 million lives can be saved.
That's incredible. The technology sounds amazing. However, how does it exist anywhere right now? And if it does, what kind of input are you getting from the people that use it, the physicians and the patients?
Yeah, so AdviNow Medical is actually existing in the world today. It's used by 18 clinics. We are a startup, so we are very early in our rollout, but we actually have the largest health systems and the largest health insurers out there evaluating us. Why? Because AdviNow completely automates the medical experience, not only for the patient, but for the doctor as well. So from a patient perspective, you don't know where to go. And so you start out by saying, if you're feeling ill, you start out with Dr. Google. However, what if you could start out just by clicking a link and have an AI engage with you, do a complete differential diagnosis, and basically make sure you get the care that you need, whether it is a primary care doctor or a trusted specialist, or maybe it's work with weight loss and nutrition, whatever it may be, you get that care that's right for you. AdviNow Artificial Intelligence actually has our computer read all available peer-reviewed literature and create the relationships between the illnesses and the treatment plans that allows the patient to be guided to the most appropriate point of care. When you think about that from a process standpoint, the patients, if they're feeling sick, they start at that digital front door. We license to hospitals, we license to clinics, we license to payers. And The patient just has to click on the link. It's used on their phone, it's used on a tablet, it's used on a computer. It's the same experience. And they go through their smart check-in. And post-COVID, everybody knows about online check-in. We believe ours is easier, but that's not really what's special about us. What's really special about us is the next step where the AI will do that differential diagnosis on the patient. And we will actually have an augmented reality platform that enables all measurements, including stethoscope exams, throat exams, ear exams, heart, lung. All of these can be done in the patient's home with exact medical precision. Or it can be done at a hospital or a retail outlet like Albertsons, which is our partner, to put augmented reality platforms there. The AI will continue to order labs, take measurements until it has predicted an illness differential, and that's when it goes to your doctor. Your doctor now, within one page, has the ability to go through and evaluate your illness. They have the images, they have the sounds. They don't even need to have a call with you because the AI has collected everything. But we still want them to have a call because healthcare is personal. And it's the patient understanding why. So now the doctor is saving 15 minutes per patient. They have a complete summary of everything that's wrong, and they can talk with the patient, confirming the most important symptoms and explaining to them the treatment protocols that are best for them to be healed as quickly as possible. The beauty here is our system is 24/7. We can get all of the information from the patient at the middle of the night and alert them to go to the emergency department if necessary, or have them send them to an urgent care, or have them wait until the next morning. From that perspective, it gives peace of mind.
James, this is, I just want to touch on this very quickly because this is one of the important things that we see in AdvaNow, right? Because I mentioned that access to care includes what happens during the doctor visit, and this is certainly a fairly dramatic shift, right? Because instead of having the doctor's nose sort of buried in a file or in a computer taking notes, the amount of time, even though they can become more efficient and spend less time with patients, they can spend more quality time with patients, more face time, actually having those conversations, asking questions, meaningful questions, instead of basically being note takers or scribes. So, I just wanted to add that this is really one of the things that we think has an impact, not only for the whole patient experience, but ties back to that patient outcome, because there are a lot of things, as much as AdvaNow can do as a system to identify possible diagnoses, there are things that the physicians can find that may be subtle, very subtle, in those conversations.
Absolutely. I mean, the beauty here is that the physicians need to spend a lot of time with certain patients. And they, quite frankly, need to spend less time with other patients. And most importantly, they need to spend zero time on clerical activity. And that's what AdvaNow enables them to do. Spend more time with the patients that need it and less time doing that clerical work.
This has always sounded very interesting to me, and having spent 20 years in healthcare, where pretty much my whole job was exactly what you said, scribing. This is really encouraging to me. But I have to say that anything that I've added to my life to make my life easier, whether it's prepared meals or, you name it, an app, it's all cost me money. Does AdvaNow cost the patients more to use?
Actually, the patients don't see any cost at all. We do charge a fee to the hospitals or to the doctors that utilize us, but because of the savings that they have in the documentation time, it actually saves them money overall. In fact, we've heard that the profitability goes from roughly 5%, which is what a practice makes today, to over 25% when they adopt AdvaNow. Now, To the general population, we don't care if the doctor makes a lot of money, but we do care if the doctor has enough freedom and flexibility to spend more time with us because they're not crunching the patients through to be able to make the payment on their house. So this is why AbbVie makes such a huge difference, not only for the doctors' lives, but for the patients.
Yeah, I love that. I love the thought, especially as a cancer survivor, having a little more time with a physician, because it seems often felt like I was rushed through my appointments. And sometimes I'd walk away going, I don't even know if I understand what I just heard. So Anthony, back to you. You know, our audience may want to know how they can support cancer innovations like AdvaNow. I mean, how can they do that?
Yeah, well, most of these companies are early stage companies, like James mentioned, and most of them need funding. So many of them are actively seeking investors, and that's why they've connected with the Cancer Fund.
Are you saying that they can invest in these companies like AdvaNow?
Possibly. Well, yes. Whether or not they can invest directly would depend on specific investment details for each company. And the one of those details ends up being the minimum investment amount, which is usually no less than $25,000, more typically $50,000 or $100,000. Oftentimes it's $1 million or more. So yeah, I mean, if you have plenty of money, you can usually invest in them.
Okay, well, I don't know about anybody else, but I don't know too many people that can write a check for 25,000, let alone $1 million. But I do know a lot of people like me. I mean, I've lost track of the hundreds and thousands of checks that I've written. Is that what the Cancer Fund does?
Yeah, that's part of what we do so we're always working to make this more accessible, make it faster, easier, and more affordable for ordinary folks like us to actually support these companies. You know, and selfishly, that's when you asked me why I started the Cancer Fund, like that was it, right? Like that's what I wanted to do. So to a large extent, I had to solve these problems for myself to be able to do this. So yeah, that is certainly part of what we do.
Okay, so I want to understand this. So I would write a check to the Cancer Fund, and you would take that money, the Cancer Fund would take that money and invest that money in those companies.
Yes, but to clarify, this is not a donation, it's an investment, right? And more specifically, they can invest in Cancer Fund 1.
Okay. You know, one of our community members, we did an event about a week ago, and I thought these were some great questions because they were all questions I had when I first heard about the Cancer Fund. And Kathleen asked, you know, where's that money going? Are you making some kind of profit? Do you own part of the company, or is it all strictly a grant directly to the company? You know, can you break that down one by one? So first, you know, where's the money going? What happens when I write a check to the Cancer Fund?
Sure. So the first, Cancer Fund brings together investors, partners in one of our funds. So today that's Cancer Fund 1. So those people that write checks would become part owner of Cancer Fund 1, or limited partners is how we refer to them.
Okay. And do you get part of the company? What happens when the Cancer Fund writes the check to AdvaNow? Is it strictly a grant? Is it a loan? I mean, what is that?
Sure. Well, we're not a nonprofit, so it's not a grant. Again, we're an investment fund, so we make an investments, and in exchange, we get equity, stock, or some type of similar instrument in exchange for our investment. So those investments, when somebody invests into Cancer Fund 1, cancer fund then invests into those innovative companies like Advenow. So our investors or limited partners would then own a piece of a company like Advenow through Cancer excuse me, through Cancer Fund One.
Okay, so then what happens?
We wait and we wait.
Well,
and
all
we
of us
wait.
that have had cancer, we're familiar with that.
Yeah. Well, early stage companies take a long time to develop, and this is one of the exciting things about Advenow is we're with them in particular. We're not talking about decades out, right? Like James told you, they have 18 clinics running today, and this is part of the reason that we have interest in them is we see an opportunity for immediate impact. And certainly we are looking at other things. There are therapies and pharmaceuticals that have much longer development timelines, can take years, sometimes even decades for those things to develop and actually make it to market. And, this is high risk, which is one of the reasons why it's so difficult and challenging for these companies to actually get funded, because if you look at early stage companies as a whole, most of them will fail. And when they fail, they lose usually 100% of their investors' capital, right? So, granted there can be rewards, but the probability of them failing is much greater than it is of them succeeding.
Okay, so what you're saying is that anybody that invests in Cancer Fund One, all the investors, all the limited partners would lose their money?
Well, it's certainly a possibility. And I think that, this is, in terms of the similarity of the why with cancer charities, right? When we talk about that and why we're doing this is the idea of being mission driven, right? This isn't about putting the profit first. It's about putting the potential impact first. So yeah, certainly that's absolutely a possibility. In fact, it's probably more than a possibility. It's not only a probability, it's the likelihood that everyone should expect. And in that regard, when we write checks to make donations to charities, that money is gone, right? So, but there is a possibility that some of these companies could succeed. And if they do that, it's possible that they could generate actually a return on the investment for the cancer fund.
And what happens if there is a return?
Well, so if those investments that Cancer Fund One made generate a return beyond the expenses of the fund, then that gets distributed to the partners.
And then what happens? Does the money get reinvested? Do we just put it in our pockets and walk away?
Yeah, I mean, that's up to the individual investors, the individual partners, right? They have that choice, right? Like they can choose, whether they take those distributions and go do other things with them, or whether they want to reinvest in the mission, right? And I think that this is a unique character or sort of a unique just quality of what we can do as a for-profit fund that can't be done with nonprofits, right? Is not only can people see what's actually happening with the money that they're contributing, the money that they're investing for support, there is that possibility that they will get it back, which could fund more sustainable, ongoing support, perhaps even at a higher level, right? And so, these are, like I said, these things take years, if not decades, to develop. So, it's possible that we may not have cured or prevented every cancer by the time we wrap up Cancer Fund One. So, I imagine at that point, if there are no more cancer innovation opportunities to support, fantastic. The world is in a great place, and we've done our job and have moved on. But if there are, then I imagine that there'll be opportunities for every individual investor there to make the same kind of decision that we have to make today, which is, do I want to support something today, right? Do I want to be a part of that today?
Right. It's very interesting. This is the part that had me excited. not just about the Cancer Fund, but about AdvaNow as well, is having the potential to be able to make a bigger impact writing that same check, which I think is what makes this so unique and so different. And there's no doubt in my mind that plenty of people are going to try to duplicate this model, that it's taken quite a while because of the SEC regulations and all the paperwork. It's taken a long time to get to this point. How long has it taken to get to this point?
Years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, to some degree, you could say I've spent my life working towards this, but no, I mean, I've been working on aspects of this for years. So
Incredible.
it's and hey, you know, if somebody else wants to do it, they're welcome to call me.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot of work, and again, it's about the mission. So yeah, certainly, it is a lot of work to get to this point.
Yeah, well, I personally want to thank you because I do believe that this is the answer to some of the challenges that we have where we're putting our dollars. So for audience members who are interested in investing in the Cancer Fund or learning more, what should they do?
Yeah, well, contact us. You know, I'd be happy to meet with anyone one-on-one or in a small group, whatever their preference is. Or we can share more information via email. So if you want to reach out, probably the easiest to email our whole team at invest@cancerfund.com or to call us at 833-311-FUND. And if you can always get that information off the website too. It's on the website.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Anthony, for explaining things about the Cancer Fund. Thank you, James, for explaining things about AdvaNow. I hope that this has brought some clarity for everyone that's here today and that you have some interest in helping us launch Cancer Fund One and supporting this. So what you can do is if you have any questions, you know, this webinar will be recorded and will be available if you want to rewatch that. If you have any questions or you want to share your feedback, you can send that directly to me as well, Ann at Cancer Fund, and that's ANN, no E, so Ann at cancerfund.com. And I really, really want to thank you for taking, it looks like it's been about 40 minutes out of your day today. Although I do want to check, do we have any questions?
Hey, Ann, we do have a question from the audience for Anthony.
Okay, if you would, please.
Does the fund also invest internationally?
Great question. So we are looking at innovations. We're looking at global innovations, certainly innovations with global impact. We're also looking at innovations that have been developed outside of the US. We have not made any investments outside of the US yet. And most of what we're looking at, not everything, but most of what we're looking at is US based. Actually, there's you'll see, we'll actually share a therapeutics company out of Ireland that we're looking at probably next month or early November. Yeah, so we are looking at things outside of the US.
Excellent, thank you. Do we have any other questions? Okay, well, again, you can always reach out to me personally if you have any other questions. You can reach out to our team at invest@cancerfund.com. And I just personally want to thank all of you for being here. Thank you for the time out of your day. To me, time is the most precious thing we have, and you've given it generously today. And just to give you a little heads up, the next thing that we're going to be talking about is recurrence. So follow along with us on the Lowdown on Cancer and the Cancer Fund as we talk about recurrence and some of the innovations that we're looking at in supporting financially around recurrence. So again, thank you so much for being here, and I really appreciate your time, and I hope you found some value here.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you for watching the Lowdown on Cancer presented by the Cancer Fund. To learn more about what's coming in future episodes, visit us at www.cancerfund.com. While you're there, check out past episodes and be sure to click join us to become a member of the Cancer Fund community. As a member of the community, you'll receive early access to new interviews, as well as other announcements. Make sure to connect to all of our social media channels so you don't miss a thing. In addition to getting early access to new episodes of the Lowdown on Cancer, Cancer Fund members play a critical role in driving cancer innovation forward so that one day we can more than hope. We can actually beat cancer. Thank you for joining us on this journey.